All right, so we are in part 2 of the Apologetics series. In part 1, we went into just kind of a summary of it all, and so now we're going to go deep and specific. So in this part, we're going to go into evidence supporting the New Testament, okay? And we're going to talk about manuscript evidence, all right, internal consistencies, external support, and also archaeological and other evidences. And so I'm going to be using a lot of dates in here. So I want to remind everybody that Jesus didn't die in 0 AD. AD doesn't mean after death, okay? And BC doesn't mean before Christ. That's a generalization, but really Christ's life was from about 4 BC to 30 AD. So first, let's start with manuscript evidence. Let's just define the New Testament and then define a manuscript. So the New Testament is the part of the Bible about Jesus and the generation of followers that knew him and walked with him and saw his resurrection. And we're going to focus on that part of the Bible because that's Christianity. And the historical evidence for these is really incredible. And it really does support that the guys who wrote these writings that make up the New Testament really were the men who walked with Jesus, lived with him, and witnessed him get crucified and resurrected from the dead. So next we're going to talk manuscripts. So a manuscript, let's just define what it is. It's a handwritten copy of the Bible. Okay, so we're talking about before the printing press was invented, they copied these by hand, okay? And these were professional scribes who would do this. So they were professional people who would hand rewrite them. And the question is this: can we trust that the New Testament we have is accurate? That this wasn't a big game of telephone over the centuries? And can we trust that these old, ancient, handwritten copies of the Bible weren't changed? And the answer is yes. And I'm going to prove it. I'm going to show you the evidence right now to prove you that the Bible we have today, the New Testament we have today, is absolutely very much reliable, more than you could ever imagine it is reliable. So, I mean, the numbers are incredible. There's this guy named Daniel Wallace, and he leads like a whole foundation that works on textual criticism and looking at these manuscripts. And so textual criticism is really a professional, scholarly way of interpreting these ancient writings. And the practice is really for any ancient writing, not just the Bible. And so these professionals have restored the Bible to really what the original writing looked like, and they believe, most of them believe that they pretty much have the original writing almost perfect. That our Bible today is exactly as it was the day it was written by the apostles themselves, okay? And I'm just going to show you the numbers that are going to convince you of that. So I'm going from a lot of Wallace's work here, at least for the numbers I'm about to give you right now. Okay, so there are over 24,000 New Testament manuscripts in various language. Again, that's the handwritten ancient copies before the printing press. And there are over 1 million quotations by early church fathers in the first millennium AD, right? So we know that, there's a lot of things outside the Bible that back up what the Bible said. And there are 5,800 manuscripts in the original Greek language. Okay, so that's a lot. All right, and then let's just go break down how early these go. I mean, because you're thinking before the printing press, you're talking like 1500s, but like let's go way, way back just to show you how accurate these things are. We've got 12 manuscripts or partial manuscripts from the 2nd century AD. Okay, that's not the 200s AD, that's the 100s AD, 100 to 200 AD, okay? 12 manuscripts. We've got 64 from the 3rd century and 48 from the 4th century, including entire New Testaments by that time, okay? These numbers are astronomical. You might not think 12 is a lot, but it is, because let's compare it to other 1st century writings of the time. Like you think about like the Odyssey and things like that. Okay, most other 1st century writings don't even have 10 manuscripts, okay? And they don't even show up that early. Usually they don't show up until the 700s AD, if not the 1500s AD. So to have 12 in the 100s AD is exponentially more reliable, okay? Really, as far as ancient texts go from that era, the New Testament is the most reliable ancient text in existence today, period. It's the best. It's almost like it was supernaturally preserved. That's my wife. Hi, Nina. Let's talk about variance, because you think, well, what about errors? Did errors get into these things? Okay, hold on. All right, so variants are changes made in these manuscripts. You know, they wrote them by hand. You can't imagine that they're all 100% right. It's impossible, right? I mean, they're pretty close. You're gonna see. So get this. A lot of people do assume that this is a big game of telephone and things were altered over time, right? But the evidence does not show that. It shows quite the opposite, right? So the number one error is spelling, okay? And you know when there's a spelling error, it's easy to pick out. Number two is grammar, okay? Especially almost mostly the ho article, H-O. It's a Greek word that means the or okay? You take it in, or they put it in where it didn't belong, or took it out where it did belong. And again, easily fixable, easy to notice, okay? Almost inconsequential, really. And this makes up 99% of all the over 99% actually, of all the variations that we see in the text. So then that other 0.5%, right? 0.5% is meaningful variance, things that are actually like you added a word in where it didn't belong, or they accidentally added in commentary where it didn't belong, okay? And really, this 0.5% of variations, they don't change any Christian doctrine. It really doesn't change the meaning of any text anywhere. It doesn't change the foundation of beliefs at all. And really, they're easy to notice. Also, just easy to pick out. And I'm going to show you that on a chart in just a second. But apologist Matt Slick from carm.org says this, quote, "The text is 99.5% pure, with the 0.5% variance being 99% typos and grammar." So let me just do the math here, okay? That means that the textual reconstructions we have today are 99.995% accurate. Wow. Let me put up a chart real quick. This is just, okay, so the texts are in blue and the errors are in red. Now, if you look on the side, the line here, the side that's just a game of telephone, okay? This is telephone versus New Testament. In a game of telephone, when you have an error, everything after it follows it, and you see that this blue line turns red and it stays red. But the New Testament had many copies being made many times, very early and quickly. And you see the chart looks more like a tournament tree. And when you have a typo or an error or variant put in there, only those that follow it are turned red, have that error. So what happens is these textual critics can look backwards in time and see where these little red spots, these little errors or changes were made, and they can just go backwards and say, okay, they can actually detect where and when the errors were made and then reconstruct the text to be the way it originally should have been. So these little mistakes that came in here and there are pretty much inconsequential. And then with the reconstructions, they've pretty much pulled out all the errors. Like, our Bibles are really just spot on. Next, let's go into early writers, okay? The New Testament is a composition of 9 authors writing multiple works, okay? And so we've got multiple witnesses of Jesus saying they saw him risen from the dead, the testimonies of his life, and the people who preached and taught after him and their writings. And so we have a lot of different witnesses saying the same thing. And the question is, can we trust these? You know, and so there's many non-biblical writings outside the Bible that actually, you know, word for word quote these. You know, and when you look backwards in time, when you have early writers that quote these guys, you say, okay, this text hasn't changed. And there's other texts to support that this text hasn't changed. So let me just give you a few examples. One early writer is Clement and another is Ignatius, okay, and they reference the New Testament. And Clement was a church leader from Rome, and he died in about 96 AD, so he's very early, and he's in the very first century, a lifetime within Christ, okay? And he mentions in his writing a man named Fortunatus, okay, and that was in his letter to Corinth, section 59. And then Paul in the Bible also mentions Fortunatus when he writes to Corinth. So that's 1 Corinthians 16:17. So you've got a guy in the Bible and a guy out of the Bible writing to the same person. Okay? That just gives you just a strong foundation that, hey, the stuff in the Bible is true. Then you've got Ignatius. His writings are from the 90s AD, again, 1st century, within the lifetime of Jesus. And he references 3 Gospels and 9 epistles. Then you've also got Polycarp and Martyr, who are other early writers. So you've also got, within the Bible and without the Bible, these cross-references saying the same thing. But in the Bible, there's a lot of them, okay? So let me just go through a few of these. Again, these guys all talk about Christ's life, death, resurrection, and so you've got 3 authors in the Gospels saying the same things, agreeing upon much of the same text even, okay? Then you've got outside the Gospels in the epistles and the letters, you've got Paul in 1 Timothy 5:18. He pretty much directly quotes Luke's Gospel from the Greek, okay? So agreeing with Luke there, agreeing with the Gospel there. And Paul makes other references to the Gospels too. And textual criticism shows that Luke sometimes scribed for Paul, wrote for Paul. And Paul mentions Luke in his, being with him, and Luke mentions Paul in his travels, okay? And they each separately mention in their separate writings mutual companions like Priscilla and Aquila. So again, just it comes together. Different people writing the same things. Paul says he met Peter, and Peter references Paul, and Luke records their interactions. So these and other countless connections just show that these witnesses, multiple witnesses, are accurate, and we've got a rock-solid foundation of truth here. Even the Old Testament has a lot of historical backing to early writings. So, for example, the Leningrad Codex is the oldest complete Hebrew Old Testament. Okay, just the Hebrew writings, the very earliest Old Testament writings, and that dates to 1000 BC. Okay, and then we've also got the Dead Sea Scrolls, which contain many copies of the Old Testament from around Jesus' time, before and after Jesus even. So. Next, we'll go into archaeological evidence, because there's a lot of them. But we're going to kind of briefly go over it. So these archaeological findings just authenticate what's in the Bible. So, for example, there's an ossuary or a bone box of a guy named Caiaphas, who was the high priest who ordered Christ's crucifixion. See John 18:28. There was also an ossuary of a son of a Simon of Cyrene. That's the guy who carried Jesus' cross for him, or helped Christ carry his cross. Stone tablets were found to prove major figures. Okay, you've got Pilate, the great Pilate stone. Okay, and he was the ruler who gave the final order to crucify Jesus. Then there's also a memorial stone with Pilate's name. There's a stone that shows that Governor Quirinius performed censuses for Caesar. And we see very well in Luke chapter 2 that Quirinius ordered a census. So again, a stone tablet verifying exactly what happened in the Bible. Other stones verify Roman Senator Gallio and Sergius Paulus. Then there's a lot of coins with the inscription and faces of major leaders found in the Bible. Okay, and I'll post 6 examples on the screen here with their references. There's locations found in the Bible, such as the Pool of Siloam, the Mars Hill, where Paul preached, and the Ephesian Theater, where Paul preached and had some run-ins with the town people. The Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C. has a ton of these things, and they've got countless artifacts. They've even got some Dead Sea Scrolls in there. It's an awesome, awesome place. I recommend you go there. I loved it. I would like to go many more times. There's even some Old Testament archaeology that I'll just speak for a moment on. There are written records showing the names of Hebrew slaves existing in Egypt before the time of Exodus. Okay, there's the Merneptah stele, which is an Egyptian inscription from 1205 BC that mentions the people of Israel. There's other findings like the tomb of King Uzziah, stone cylinders with King Cyrus and King Nebuchadnezzar, archaeological findings of King David. The Mesha stele and Lachish letters both confirm events in the Old Testament, right? And then they got geography. The geography is all accurate, All right, the New Testament is 100% verified geographically. The Old Testament is 93% verified geographically. That means the places it mentions are all real places verified. And archaeologists continue to find more places to verify the rest of the missing Old Testament places. Historian Colin Hemmer has identified 84 facts from the book of Acts that are confirmed by historical, geological, and archaeological findings. And interestingly, this is a really neat snippet. The oldest piece of evidence in the Bible confirms the city of Erech from Genesis 10:10, and that is an inscribed stone cylinder from 3500 BC. Wow. So, it appears that our New Testament and the testimonies about Jesus Christ, his life, his death, his resurrection, this is actually the most reliable ancient text that exists, and we can surely trust what the Bible says about Jesus. So, in part 3, we'll talk about evidence for Christ's life and resurrection, and this is just really great stuff too. And then in part 4, we'll talk about signs and the prophecies leading up to Jesus. Be blessed. Amen.